Hey everyone, welcome to SCJ Marketing Think Tank. I am not Lauren Baker. I'm Kelsey Jones, the executive editor at Search Engine Journal. Lauren's internet went completely down, so he might join us later if he can get it back up, but I'm going to moderate today. So I'm so excited to be joining you guys today. We're going to talk about the Search Marketer's Guide to turning online browsing into online buying. And today we're joined by Patrick Hutchinson. He is the product marketing manager at Marin Software. So before we start Patrick's presentation, we're going to just do a quick poll just to kind of get a feel of what you guys are interested in, what your experience is and what you're working on. So I'm going to launch that poll right now, and it would be great if you guys could answer that. So we want to know what your current monthly online marketing spend is. So under 10,000, 10,000 to 150,000, 150,000 to 250,000, or over 250,000. So this just helps Patrick kind of see where you guys are coming from, and it'll help him with his presentation. So it looks like we have about 57% tuned in now with votes. Let's just keep it open a little bit longer. Usually we try to get to 80%. We have 69% right now. All right, so I'm going to close it. And it looks like under 10,000 is the majority, and then the next biggest is 10,000 to 150,000. So that's going to help Patrick. Thank you so much. So I'm going to hide this, and then Patrick, if you want to take it away.
Thank you. Hello and welcome everyone to the webinar. My name is Patrick Hutchinson, and over the next 20 minutes I will guide you through some thought-provoking tactics used by today's leading online marketers to turn online browsing into online shopping. Before we get started, just a little bit about me. I've been with Marin Software in various roles for around 8 years. Before that, I ran digital marketing campaigns for a handful of tech companies here in the San Francisco Bay Area. At Marin Software, I currently work on the marketing team, where I'm the product marketing manager for our search application. My areas of expertise are search, Facebook, and programmatic display advertising. And just to keep this kind of fun, here's an interesting thing about me. I can't say I've done it very often, but I have rode myself to work from Marin to downtown San Francisco across the San Francisco Bay. It's thrilling, if not exhausting, commute option for anyone tired of today's San Francisco traffic. Okay, so let's get started. Here's today's agenda. I will spend a few minutes framing up what the online marketing ecosystem looks like today, and then we'll spend the rest of the time looking at 5 or so tactics that I've curated for today's session, as well as a real-world case study to close out. All in all, we'll take about 20 minutes to get through this. So what is online advertising? At its fundamental basis point, it's really money turned into more money through capturing the user's attention using a small ad. And that's really the end goal of online marketing, where every marketer is trying to make that second pile of cash as big as possible relative to the first pile. So in industry speak, we call that return on ad spend. And there's really 2 types of online marketers today. There's direct response and there's brand advertising. So the difference between these 2 branches of marketers is the time frame between grabbing the user's attention and persuading that person to take action. So, as a couple examples, selling a t-shirt is more commonly bucketed under direct response, whereas selling a car is more commonly bucketed under brand advertising. So the question becomes, how do I find the right people to show my ads to? And the answer is increasingly becoming one of two answers. You turn to today's modern day call operators, which are Facebook and Google. They act, basically as a routing system, kind of like an old telephone exchange, which the picture I have here on the screen. And they deliver your message to your target audience in exchange for money. So the message they deliver on your behalf can be general, like I want to show my message to men that are 35 to 50 in the San Francisco Bay Area. Or it can be specific, like the person that just looked at that $2,000 handbag that I'm selling in my web store. We call the latter type retargeting. So who are these new operators? As I mentioned before, they're the 2 largest operators. They're delivering the most messages for advertisers, Google and Facebook, and you can see that they basically operate marketplaces connecting the advertisers to the consumer. The reason that they've kind of become the 2 leading operators is multifold, but the short answer boils down to their ability to send highly targeted messages to specific addresses that marketers care about most. So in the past, before online marketing, we had direct marketers that would send advertisements in the mail to postal addresses. Today, the digital marketers use Google and Facebook as the mailman, and the address they request delivery to is the user's mobile ID, which is basically permanent as long as you have your ID. So it's easy to keep track of that person. There's also computer IDs, email addresses, and cookies. So Google and Facebook are able to deliver these messages far more efficiently than any mailman ever was able to. So to give you an idea of the cost differential, if you're going to run a direct response campaign through the mail today, it costs about $1,000 per 1,000 impressions. So that's, you might call that $1,000 CPM, which is very high. And then compare that to the effective CPM of online ads. What you look at, if you look at your own campaigns and the effective CPM, is that those ads can be thousands of times less efficient than direct response mail, and still break even with that approach to advertising. And it's worth noting that that is a $50 billion industry today. So that direct mail industry is worth $50 billion, and that money is starting to shift away from direct response mailing onto the internet. And what we're starting to see is more competition. So I got some stats here. I'll kind of run through these. So this slide's a little bit of a downer. I don't mean to be a bearer of bad news, but for anyone that's been doing this for a while, it should be pretty apparent that the days of easy online marketing have passed. I guess I've been working in the space since pretty much the dawn of Google Ads, and it's been amazing to see the rapid shift of keywords that were once highly profitable with little auction competition, change to a cutthroat battleground where break-even was, the best that could be hoped for some really highly competitive keywords. And ironically, because getting online campaigns started has become increasingly easy, so easy that just about anyone with a credit card and some free time can start buying ads, I'd argue that's a major reason why the competition prices have soared, along with the tremendous shift in eyeballs from print media to digital media. Obviously, money follows eyeballs, even if it kind of happens slowly, and we're starting to really see that accelerate in recent years. As we've seen on Facebook and Google, the number of advertisers in both marketplaces has increased dramatically, and that's the stats I have here on the screen. Google has jumped from 1 million advertisers roughly in 2007 to best guess around 3 million plus today, whereas Facebook's already at 3 million advertisers on its platform, and the number of advertisers is growing at 50% year over year. So if they continue growing at that pace, this time next year they'll have over 4 million advertisers running ads that you and I are basically competing against for the same finite resource, which is the consumer's attention. So another way to think about this, 10 years ago, perhaps there was only 1 or 2 car companies running digital ads online. So the value of each ad that they showed to a consumer was proportionally high. Whereas today, every single car company runs online advertising campaigns. So that means the supply of car ads has roughly increased tenfold, while the amount of money I, as a consumer, have to spend really hasn't changed. At the end of the day, I still only have $30,000 give and take to spend on a car. So basically, if you look at all those new ads that have come into play into the marketplace, it reduces the effective value of every single ad that is being shown to a consumer. On top of that, consumers have learned to turn a blind eye to the number of ads they see on a daily basis. So it should be clear, the point I'm trying to make here is that in order to stand out from the crowd, you need to treat every interaction with your customer as if it's your last. You need to really think about how you're going to communicate with that person to try and get their attention, because it's increasingly hard to make an impact. So the next slide here, we're looking at a chart, and one way to stand out is to discover imbalances in the marketplace. So one way to be different and to change your narrative is to look for market imbalances. And what do I mean by market imbalances? So if you think about basic economic principles, a market where supply and demand are maximized ends up squeezing profit margins for competitors. If you think about airlines as one example, the competition is ruthless in that industry. So while they might, airlines as a whole generate a large and rather impressive amount of revenue, they don't get to keep much of the value they generate in the form of profit, because they have to spend that money to compete with each other. So if I told you that there's a new telephone operator or mailman, thinking about the analogy I talked about earlier, in the internet world, who has lots of addresses that they want to deliver mail to, but they don't have enough messages to send yet, you might find that intriguing, right? So here's one example that we're looking at, and this chart is showing an up-and-coming search engine called DuckDuckGo. And as you can see, it's on a tear. It's still largely flying under the advertiser's radar, but consumers seem to be discovering it in droves, which is exactly what we're seeing here. We're seeing that hockey stick growth that every entrepreneur in Silicon Valley dreams of. And for smart advertisers, using exploratory spend to test out new digital publishers like this can yield impressive payoffs. Albert Einstein famously said, "Compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it." I'd argue that that quote can be modified to today's environment and applied to online marketing by looking for small strategic wins that, if practiced routinely, will compound over time to yield your program outsized returns. So I think we've all had enough of my abstract introduction to online advertising. So let's get down to some brass tacks and start our discussion of real-life tactics you can put into action today. So the theme of the tactics I'm going to explore here is that today's winners in online marketing, they have to outsmart the competition, and we have about 5 tactics that we'll go through. So building on that example I showed with DuckDuckGo, the first tactic I want to talk about is outsourcing manual labor to automation. So like I was saying with DuckDuckGo example, in the larger message that marketers should keep some exploratory spend on tap at all times in order to seek out new publishers with less mature ad programs, and as a result, less competition in the short run. One question that may have popped in your head when I was explaining that is, how the heck do you expect me to have the time to find these opportunities in the first place? My week's already jam-packed with managing my current campaigns. How am I going to find more time to actually do what you're talking about? And so for that, I would respond, that's a great and logical question. And I'd also say that I have an answer, and that's what we're going to talk about here. So the answer that I would respond with is that you should outsource your manual tasks that you're doing for campaign management to automation. In this screenshot that we're looking at here is just one amongst hundreds of different tasks that can be automated by the countless companies, software companies offering point solutions, or by companies offering an entire suite of marketing tools, including hundreds of automation solutions like the company I work at, Marin Software. So in this particular case that we're looking at is Marin Software's ability to automatically build and update your creatives and your campaigns using a data feed. And if you don't have a data feed, you can also use our web crawler, which will go and look at your website and generate a data feed for you, pulling the information from your website. So once this automation is set up, you can layer on other types of automation like bidding, which uses advanced mathematics to help you set the optimal keyword bid for every ad that you're showing in order to maximize your ad spend to achieve a targeted key performance indicator or a margin target or a cost per lead target. So with that explained, in your task of creating, editing, and optimizing your keywords, creatives, and bids fully automated, you now have a pile of time on your hands which you can use to go and find the real needle movers, the opportunities that lay before you to create multiple incremental improvements, which is time that will yield a big step forward for your program. Or maybe you'll find that you'll find a huge needle mover like a partnership that you can explore otherwise without putting this automation in place. So tactic number 1 is to invest in automation so that you free up your time to go and pursue big needle movers and let the tactic that you already have in place run kind of lights out. So the next tactic number 2, is somewhat unorthodox. So I think everyone on the line probably is somewhat familiar with retargeting. And the idea with retargeting is once a person has visited your website with whatever intent they came in, maybe they searched for something or maybe they clicked on a display ad, maybe they don't convert. On average, the conversion rate's in the industry around 2%, so 98% of those first touch clicks that you're paying for don't convert. And what you want to do is, that person is in market for what you're selling because they ended up on your website, so there was some interest or intrigue. But you want to really refine your strategy for how you're going to retarget that person, in the days and weeks ahead. And so this tactic that I'm talking about here is fairly kind of a new concept, where it's basically saying we want to take search intent data captured from a Google and move it to the Bing network, so that if that person that we know is interested in buying insurance because they were searching for an insurance policy on Google, clicks on our ad, doesn't convert, but then if they enter the Bing network, we can set hooks. And if they show up in the Bing network, we can basically automatically continue to talk to them instead of having to start from scratch and relearn that they're interested in an insurance policy. And this goes both directions. So if you're advertising on Bing and you learn about a person on Bing, you can just as easily do that same workflow on Google. So the whole idea here is to not keep reinventing the wheel, but make those interactions with your customer, potential customer, really high impact if you think back to what I was talking about earlier, where you need to maximize and make sure that you really capture that person's attention by using the data advantage that you have. Cool. So the next tactic I want to talk about is the multiplier effect, and this is a study that Marin did with Facebook. And what we found is that for our advertisers that are running Google campaigns side by side with their Facebook campaigns, with that integrated approach to campaign management, they were able to achieve a much higher revenue per conversion and also a higher revenue per click. So what does that mean, and how does that happen? So first and foremost, Facebook and Google are the two leading publishers on the internet today, but they're fundamentally different. And one of the ways that they're fundamentally different is that Facebook is really great at generating desire, generating intent, because people have gone to Facebook and they're in an exploratory phase where they want to look at their friends' photos, they want to look at for updates, they want to read news articles, they want to learn about new things. It's a great time for you to introduce a brand new product. That widget that I never knew about, you put it front and center on their newsfeed, and all of a sudden, that might be a great present for mom or dad. So what happens is Facebook's great for generating that interest, that intent for something that maybe people didn't realize they wanted. And then what Google's great at is converting that intent. So once people go to Google, they type in what they want, and then advertisers are able to show them a message immediately that says, here's that thing that you're looking for. Here's that widget you saw on Facebook, and you're doing a price comparison, you're looking for a review. Here's a quick link to purchase it immediately. And so what we found is that when advertisers got smart about combining these two different levers and combining them together, what they were doing is they were really focusing on generating intent on the Facebook social channel and then converting that intent once the person entered the search funnel, which is lower in the funnel. And these are the great results. And what really benefited our advertisers here is running those campaigns side by side, being able to look at the performance metrics side by side, and then also optimizing their bidding algorithm to maximize the performance gains. Cool, so that closed out tactic 3. Tactic number 4 I'm going to talk about is cross-device retargeting. So, earlier I talked about retargeting. This is another strategy also using retargeting, and what we're doing here is basically acknowledging that users today, especially in North America and in parts of Europe, have multiple devices that they're using on a regular basis. So I know in my backpack today I have my laptop, I have my phone, which is a smartphone, and I have a tablet. And so as an advertiser, that creates a dilemma. How do I know that you're the same person? I want to show you a continuous marketing campaign across 3 different devices that basically have just random numbers behind them, and I need to somehow figure out that you're the same person so I can show you a continuous marketing campaign instead of treating you as a net new person. So what this example I'm going to walk through is multi-step, and it's going to show you how we can do that using, in this case, we're going to use Marin Software's technology. So we'll start with a desktop search for car insurance. And so we'll assume that I'm searching for a car insurance policy, and for anyone that doesn't know, these keywords are incredibly expensive. So we'll assume that a click happens, and that click can cost, we'll say it costs $5, but it could cost a lot more potentially. And we'll pretend that it's for Geico, which is a big insurance company, and there's a form fill where they would try and convert that user to buy the policy. Maybe the phone rings, maybe the baby starts crying. For whatever reason, that person gets distracted and doesn't complete the transaction. And so now, as the advertiser, the question becomes, I've gathered this really rich intent data. I know this person is shopping for the product that I'm selling. I've already paid, I've already invested in this person. And I know that if I can persuade this person to call me on the telephone, my conversion rates are through the roof. So the question becomes, how do I get this person to give me a phone call? And the answer in this particular use case is with a technology that Marin Software supplies our customers, which we call Marin Smart Tag. And it's cookie-based, and it's going to basically, when that person comes through and they click, it's going to cookie them, and it's going to run that cookie through our Marin device graph. And it's going to look for known matches. So we basically have a big database of lots of different IDs for devices, and we're able to connect the dots between those. So Marin device graph knows that this is Patrick's phone, this is Patrick's tablet, this is Patrick's computer. And so if they see me come through on this desktop search, they can also connect the dots between my phone and my tablet And so if you want to continue that campaign and you think that there's a higher probability that you can get me to do a phone call if you target me on my mobile device, the next step here is we have that mobile ID matched, and we can continue the campaign by showing me that same Geico ad, or maybe you can give me an incentive on that Geico ad to get me to pick up the phone and call them, and then we can convert through a call center, and all that information for attribution purposes can be tracked back to those clicks that I paid for both on the desktop and on the mobile device. All right, so that closed out tactic 4. Tactic 5 is our last tactic, and then we'll finish up by looking at a quick case study. So probably just 2 minutes left. So tactic number 5, I call it CRM retargeting and winbacks. So you obviously notice that a lot of these tactics use retargeting, and it really comes back to outsmarting your competition by using your data advantage to outsmart that competition. So in this case, what we're talking about is activating data in your CRM system. That's customer relationship management. You can think of a Salesforce or an Oracle where you might be storing all of your user information about people that have purchased from you, people if you're doing subscriptions that maybe lapsed in subscription, you want to bring them back, you want to win them back. So the cool thing about today's marketing technology is that all that data that's in the CRM system can be activated. We call it data activation. And I've just shown a couple examples here. So AdWords calls it customer match. Facebook calls it custom audiences. And then Perfect Audience, which is a Marin-owned display company, we do all the customer matching into the exchanges. So that allows you to target people when they're browsing websites outside of Facebook or Google-owned websites. We can also target those publishers like a Time.com or ESPN or a CNN, for example. And so what this means is we're taking email addresses or home addresses or phone numbers, and we're pushing them into these different channels. And then the channels are able to match against device IDs, and we can now identify really highly targeted audiences that we want to provide almost a one-to-one custom message for. So if we think about that subscription option, I may have stopped paying my subscription for the Wall Street Journal. They may want me to come back and start using their services again. They can offer me a promotion like 12 months for a discounted price, and they'll be able to talk to me as I move across my devices, as I move from social channels to search channels to browsing different publications. They can continue to talk to me, and over time they'll start to really either penetrate me, or we can shut that off if the ads just aren't working. But the real takeaway here is that your CRM data is, again, a big data advantage that you have, and now you can activate that information very easily directly through AdWords, directly through Facebook, and then also through a demand-side platform like the Perfect Audience tool that I mentioned earlier. Great, so that closes out the tactics, and then the last part here is just quickly talking about a case study. So Cupid Media is a Marin customer, and they run a consortium of dating websites, and they adopted some of the tactics that I talked about earlier, and they also used all 3 of our products, which is Marin Search, Marin Social, and Marin Display. And like the tactic I showed earlier where combining Facebook and Google produced outsized returns, these guys saw the same sort of results by combining all of their campaigns into one integrated workflow, and also using the Marin bidding algorithm across all 3 channels to produce, at the end of the day, 78% more conversions, which is an outstanding result that any search marketer or performance marketer in the space would be happy to achieve. So I will stop there. I think the next step is to open it up for questions, and I'll turn it back over to the moderator.
Thanks, Patrick. Really interesting with the case study and everything, and a lot of cool tactics that I hadn't really thought about, especially with Facebook. So again, we're live tweeting and the hashtag SCJ Think Tank if you guys want to follow along and live tweet. We're also accepting more audience questions. So if anybody has any questions for Patrick, feel free to put them in the question box on GoToWebinar, and we will be able to answer those. Also, Danielle is going to share the landing page for our next webinar. So if anyone wants to sign up for our next webinar with Brent Satoris and myself, he's going to be talking about Reddit, and I believe that is on August 10th. So at the same time, so Danielle, if you could share the landing page, that'd be awesome. So on to questions. So I had one just for myself, Patrick. You know, something that I've seen a lot of people talk about is call tracking, especially when it comes to AdWords. How do you handle call tracking? Is it something that, you know, you implement in all of your campaigns? Is it something that gets often overlooked by people that have AdWords campaigns?
That's a great question, and if we look back at the slide I was talking about earlier where it concludes with a conversion that happens in a call center, we work with around 100 different partners at Marin Software, and we definitely have call tracking partners. And the value add there is that conversions that happen on the phone are still definitely a part of the marketer's workflow. They're not going away anytime soon. And we want to make sure that our customers on Marin Software get credit for the conversions that happen offline. And so with our partners, we're able to feed that information back into our system and attribute it to all of the clicks that happened leading up to that conversion event.
Okay, awesome. So we have a couple audience questions for you. Victoria was asking, so she said, I like that you used an insurance company as an example since I work for one. The keywords, like you said, are so expensive. How would you recommend that we optimize our ads and get the best bang for our buck?
It's a great question. Yeah, I really think it comes down to being very strategic about when you're going to bid on individual keywords. There's definitely the brand keyword that you want to protect, so that's a different story. But when you're competing in the open marketplace on kind of broad match keywords, I think you want to use data to your advantage. And so for the tactic I was talking about earlier, where you're going to activate your CRM data, that means for people that are already, you want to activate your CRM data in kind of two different ways. One is to use, for Google, you might want to use RLSAs to negative retarget people that are already signed up for your policies because you don't have anything left to sell to them. So you basically don't want them clicking on your ads if they're just trying to log into their account. You want them to use the natural organic results. Secondly, when people are about to lapse in their policy, those are the people you really want to target hard and make sure that if they're shopping around for other policies, that you're there front and center and reminding them that you've been a good provider for them and that they should re-up with you, and potentially you might want to incentivize them if you think that that's required. And then also, taking that intent data that you're gathering from those first clicks that don't convert and potentially trying to convert those people using other means, and then potentially getting strategic about how you use those negative remarketing lists. So maybe you captured that this person's in market for that product I'm selling through an expensive click, and then I don't want to keep paying for that expensive click for that person, and maybe I want to try and convert them on a different channel. So those would be kind of some of my thoughts on that topic.
Yeah, really good answers and concrete tips. So thank you for that. Okay, next up, Candy is asking, when should you retarget versus use traditional ads, or should you always be doing both?
That's a great question. I don't think there's any hard and fast rule in that, but it depends a lot, I think, on what kind of product you're selling. So, like I was talking about earlier, if you think of maybe an analogy, if you're driving down the highway, I-5 is a big highway here that connects San Francisco to LA. There's not much in between, a lot of stops, and you'll notice that there's big billboards as you're driving, and says, it reminds you, 30 miles there's a McDonald's, 20 miles there's a McDonald's, 10 miles there's a McDonald's, next stop McDonald's. So we think of those as kind of like view-through conversions, where the ad is just reminding people, they see it, they might not fully register they're looking at the ad, but it gets in their head, and it over time, as they see more and more of those impressions, they start to generate interest or desire for a product. So we think of that as demand generation, and that's really where you're not doing very strict targeting. You might know generally the people that might be interested in your product, but you're trying to just get your ad out there to get them interested in potentially purchasing it. And then where retargeting comes into play is once you've generated that desire, that demand, they're searching for your product, they're clicking on the expensive ads that are lower in the funnel. then you want to start retargeting that person to make sure that they convert, because at that point, they're thinking about buying this product. They want to itch that scratch that you've generated for them, and that's where retargeting really, that's the reason it has a great ROI, is because that person is ready to purchase, and if they don't purchase from you, they might purchase from somebody else. So kind of a long-winded answer, but that's the way I think about it.
Yeah, good points. Candy, I hope that helped you. So moving on, we have a couple questions. They're kind of similar. So I'm just going to go with Tina's question. So she was asking, for a small business, our budget is pretty limited in terms of marketing overall. So what would you say, what should our budget be? Do you have a ballpark, kind of for a small local business, or, does that just depend on the industry?
Gotcha, yeah. Without all the details, that might be a little tricky for me to answer, but it really depends on if you go back to that first slide where I was talking about, at the end of the day, what is online marketing? It's spending some money to put ads in front of people to generate more money. And so if that pile, the second pile, is huge compared to that first pile, then you should be investing more money into your online advertising programs. If that second pile isn't that big, then you might want to be a little bit more modest with your budget. So it really depends on, and we call that the return on ad spend. How productive is every ad dollar that you're putting into the system, and what's coming out of it? So I can't say a hard and fast number, but I would definitely recommend exploring multiple options for delivering your message to potential customers. Facebook or Google, or Facebook, Google, Bing, Yahoo. If you want to use a easy-to-use retargeting solution, Perfect Audiences, you can be up and running in 10 minutes. Those are all great places to start. Use some exploratory budget, try it out, figure out what works, what doesn't work. Some places may be too expensive because they're so competitive. So it's really some trial and error if you're just getting started today.
Yeah, for sure, and that's a good point about tracking, kind of your ROI on paid ads, because I've seen some businesses that spend thousands on, Facebook ads, but they make, 10 times their money back. So even though spending thousands on ads or tens of thousands seems crazy, if you're making your money back, multiple times over, it's always worth it.
Yep, absolutely agree.
All right, so we have a couple more questions. So Claire is asking, what do you suggest for a company whose main audience is 65 plus through direct mail while trying to get customers that are 45 plus online?
Okay, so the direct mail business is targeting an older population, and the online marketing is going for a more youthful audience.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So 45 plus, so 45 to 65 is who they want to target online. Do you have any tips for, targeting certain age ranges, or is it dependent more on what the company's offering?
Yeah, I mean, so Facebook has, in terms of audience targeting, some of the richest data available. So if you're trying to do the brand advertising like I was talking about earlier, to get in front of people and try and create that desire, and you really focus on targeting by age range. Facebook is a great starting point because the campaigns are very easy to set up, and that's one of the default targeting options that you have. And then as you start to get clicks from those ads, you can start to do interesting retargeting campaigns, potentially in other channels, but also within Facebook. So I would say start out with Facebook, see how that works, and then you can start to expand from there. There's a whole world of programmatic display, which has extremely rich targeting because you're able to work with what's called a DMP, so it's a data management platform. You can basically just think of it as a large database where you can store your own information about customers, and then you can also buy and basically enhance that information from third-party vendors. I kind of think of it as like an Amazon for data. And so that's where you can, if you want to get really sophisticated, you can run rich campaigns where you're not only targeting people by their age range, but also by their credit score, their income, where they live, all types of different attributes. That'd be my answer.
Good. Yeah, I agree. I think Facebook is a lot, their ad platform, for someone who's just starting out, it's a lot easier than AdWords, just because AdWords has so many options. Facebook just seems more user-friendly, especially if you're kind of just getting started and don't have a big background in paid. So cool. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Oh, here's a good question from Scott. He wants to know, what steps would you recommend for a B2B retailer to ensure they are reaching qualified users in a Facebook campaign?
A B2B retailer. That's a good question. So I'd start with one interesting new development that is in the display world is co-op marketing, which we can also call second-party marketing, and this has become very popular on the Marin platform. So we have thousands of advertisers, and they're able to team up. They basically can friend each other, similar to like Facebook or LinkedIn, where it's double opt-in. You guys agree to work together. A really simple example would be like a shoe company and a sock company that have the same target audience, but they're not really competing with each other. They're kind of like friends of sort. And so they can share each other's first-party information. So they can say, here's all my users that were searching for these shoes. You can go ahead and target them with your ads, and then you give me all your audience that was looking for socks because I want to sell them my shoes. And so for B2B advertisers on our platform, they love this because B2B is typically we're dealing with smaller audiences, but the value of those audiences can be very high depending on what type of product you're selling. And so for people on our display platform that want to team up, they can generate huge audiences of very highly targeted B2B buyers by working together. So that would be one approach you can take. And if you're interested in learning more about that, go to perfectaudience.com and you can sign up and check out and see some of the B2B customers that you could team up with. For Facebook, it's a little harder for me to probably give you a direct answer on that. It really depends on how you want to do your targeting and what type of B2B product you're selling. But there's also the opportunity to work with a third party like Marin, our social product, where we can layer in additional information on top of the basic Facebook targeting that comes out of the box. So for B2B, it's really about making sure that you're talking to the right person, and once you've identified the right person, sticking with them, and because the ROI on that conversion could be substantial.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Okay, we have probably about a few minutes left for more questions with Patrick. Just kind of looking through the ones Danielle had sent me. There's another Facebook question. Debbie wants to know, can you talk a little bit more about Facebook retargeting? When is that useful?
Yeah, absolutely. So with Facebook, if you want to get started with retargeting, you basically are going to install a tracking code on your website, and then you can also layer in additional information if you want to use. So the customers using Marin software use a technology called Smart Tag that I use in one of my examples. And what that does is it allows you to put rules and logic around when that retargeting pixel from Facebook is allowed to fire. So examples would be only fire the retargeting pixel if someone has searched on a high-value Google search term. The example I used before was that insurance term. Those are very expensive. I want to retarget that person on Facebook because maybe the clicks there are more cost efficient than trying to retarget them directly on Google. So you can have the basic Facebook retargeting pixel, and then you can put logic around it with the Marin Smart Tag. Other examples would be if someone does different behavior on a website, like they browse over with their cursor over certain parts of the website, or they get to certain steps in the checkout. Whatever the case might be, it's fully customized. But once that's up and running, then you can run your retargeting campaigns through Facebook. And what it really comes down to is understanding how much you're spending on retargeting and then what the return is. And so what we spend a lot of time with our advertisers and working with is to basically optimize their campaigns to target audiences where we know they're going to produce a strong profit at the end of the day. And we really want to make sure that we minimize spending money on audiences that are not going to convert. because maybe they've already purchased the product from somebody else. And so that's part of the secret sauce behind what Marin software does for our customers.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, you definitely don't want to be spending money on people that aren't going to buy things from you, for sure. All right, moving on. Let's see here. So LJ wants to know, are there no CPI issues with using CRM data to reach past customers? Is there an opt-in or opt-out required?
Would you mind repeating that question?
Sure. Are there no CPI issues with using CRM data to reach past customers? Is there an opt-in or opt-out required? So basically mining your CRM data for campaigns, I think, is what they're asking.
Yeah, I mean, as long as as long as the data that you're onboarding to the various publishers was given to you willfully, then you shouldn't really be crossing any boundaries. I think where you get on the wrong side of everyone involved is if you acquire the data from a source where that person did not willfully give you the data. You probably don't want to go into that situation. So if you're using emails, for example, to onboard or do the data onboarding, make sure that those emails are emails that you collected yourself and that you not emails that you're buying from somebody else.
Yeah, really good point. Usually buying emails 99 to 100% of the time is not a good idea. It can backfire and create a bad image for your company. So
Absolutely.
Good point there. All right, Steve is asking, are there any industries where retargeting and just ads in general don't work for e-commerce? I mean, have you seen in your experience, maybe certain industries do better with other types of marketing or paid campaigns?
Right. So in Marin software, where I have the majority of my experience, we work with customers across all types of industries, and retail makes up about 30% of our customer base. So we work with lots of very large retailers, and retargeting is at this point a best practice used amongst all the retailers. They all have different strategies that they use for retargeting. So the really kind of basic retargeting has sort of been commoditized at this point, and where retargeting remains valuable is when you layer on different tactics and different strategy to make sure that that person that you're continuing to talk to remains engaged and is interested in your product, and you're not kind of going after someone where there's no opportunity. And so some of the tactics I explored today are things that I've seen advertisers doing that work successfully. So for e-commerce, it's incredibly competitive, kind of like the airlines I was talking about earlier. There's lots of people competing for those precious dollars that people have to spend on products, whether they're necessities or products that are kind of luxuries. So I would say I can't think of any retailer that's not doing retargeting, but I also can't think of too many retailers that are just doing basic retargeting. They all have some sort of strategy behind it. And I know one example would be if you're using a display product, which I've mentioned a few times before, perfectaudience.com, they're able to show you all of the placements where your ads are being retargeted, so you can make sure that your ads are only being shown on high quality websites. And they also give you the ability to target people based on different buckets of how recent they came to your website. So some retargeting platforms where you don't have much control around when your customers are being retargeted, they will just basically retarget the heck out of that person as soon as they come to your website because they want to get that last click credit for the conversion. So at Marin, we're not as interested in that. We really want to make sure that the advertiser and the user has a good experience. And so we allow you to do whatever sort of retargeting strategy you want. And one example of that would be instead of blasting that person immediately after they leave your website, you might want to wait a day or two or even a couple of weeks before you start retargeting that person. So with our software, you have full ability to set up those strategies and then execute them however you think it's going to perform best for your program.
Okay, cool. So we have one last question before we are out of time for today. And if anyone has any other questions for Marin in general, you can also reach out to us on Twitter. Their Twitter hashtag is Marin Software, their Twitter username, not hashtag, and then or ask on the hashtag SCJ Think Tank. So Sadie is asking, I work for a wholesale distribution company that lists their products online but does not sell online. You have to call to order. What channels or methods would you recommend to gain sales?
So I'm assuming that by list the products online, she's referring to like marketplaces where there's a revenue share. Is that?
I would think, you know how there's enterprise level suppliers or maybe, you know, manufacturers that serve enterprise businesses but don't have an online store. Maybe they're just listing what products are available, kind of like an online catalog that there's no online shopping cart for.
I see. Okay, and it's all the conversion takes place on the phone. Is that the second part of the question?
Yes, so they don't accept, they have their products online, but they don't sell online, so you have to call in to order.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's interesting situation. I would say it's a little bit unusual in today's environment, but there's different ways of approaching it without knowing all the details around what's being sold or you know what the buyer is potentially. I mean, it kind of comes down to the same sort of principles where you're going to generate demand for your product. You're going to nurture that person through you know kind of a continual campaign, and then once the person is far enough along, you know, in this case it might be that they spend a certain amount of time browsing your products on your website. So if you use Marin Smart Tag, we can put people into audience buckets based on how long they stay on a certain web page, for example. So anyone that stays on one of the product pages for over 30 seconds or over a minute, you know, that's a pretty good indication that that person is very interested in whatever it is that you're selling. And so I would put that person into maybe like a high intent bucket, and then I would, you know, you could try and target them on a mobile device because mobile has a higher propensity for people to just click the call button. And then for you guys, that's perfect because you want to get them, at the end of the day, your goal is to drive that person into the call center where I imagine the conversion rate is high because most call centers have high conversion rates. So without the details, I can't give you a specific roadmap, but that would kind of be a framework or a way of thinking about it, that at least the way that I would approach it.
Yeah, you could also, Sadie, you could also move customers through a funnel. So maybe they could fill out a form, an online form with what products they're interested in, and then you could call them, depending on, you know, what type of manpower you have set up. That could be another way to get their information as well, have them have a form, I mean, depending on what you're offering. If you're only offering like one huge product, that would make a lot of sense versus, oh, you know, we need a huge order of lumber or whatever. So, all right, well, Patrick, I think that's all we have for today. Thank you so much for such a useful presentation.
Absolutely, and appreciate everyone's time, and hopefully this is useful. If anyone needs to reach us, we're happy to talk more at marinsoftware.com.
Awesome. Until next time, thanks everyone for coming.